Been a bit since I last shared an update. For those of you who are new here, I'm Joe. This is Maui Game Studios. I'm working on a mobile and web game called Infinity Pirate. Today I've got a mix of life updates, game development chaos, and some deep dives into Godot technicals. Let's dive in. So, where do I start? I took a long break from development. Life's been an adventure. I got a new job. I'm engaged. That's right. I leveled up IRL. But as it turns out, wedding planning is like debugging. Every solution causes three or more problems. While I was busy IRL, Infinity Pirate got pulled from the Android store. Why? Apparently, I missed some kind of update to my target SDK version. Classic dev mistake. They actually banned my account. I also forgot to update my iOS and update the payment information, so that's why the game is no longer on the App Store. I'll probably take care of that any day now. So one of the big changes was switching from Lootlocker to Silentwolf for cloud save data. Lootlocker is great, especially if you're dealing with microtransactions because it has a built-in security for things like app purchases. But Silentwolf, it's a Godot-specific solution and it's much faster to set up. The trade-off is that it's a bit less flexible when it comes to modifying player data. Here's the deal. With Silentwolf, I'm storing all the player data in a giant dictionary or object. Think of it as a JSON like structure. And since the data is text based, it loads pretty fast. Navigating it, though, feels like trying to find Waldo in a library. One major downside of switching to Silentwolf is that I couldn't transfer logins from Lootlocker. This means that my players need to create new accounts. But considering the player base is currently minimal, maybe like 3 or 4 people, let's just say it's not a catastrophic loss. By the way, if you're watching this, you're welcome to contact me, and I would love to re-gift you whatever you lost in the server migration. Also, Lootlocker offers a bit more security out of the box for microtransaction integration. However, I'm not really planning on having microtransactions at this point. Maybe I'll do something like that in the future if it seems financially viable. But for now, I'm just going to sell unlock codes, which I think are a bit easier to sell directly myself. I plan on making rewards in game for joining Discord or subbing to social, stuff like that. Maybe if you sub to the artist for the game, his social, Bizmaster Studios on Twitch, for example, you could get a bonus from that. Me and him will probably talk about that later. Talking to you, Biz. All right, feature updates. First off, the collect vial. This randomly spawning item sweeps up all the scattered experience coins on the screen. It's implemented as an area 2D node with a collision shape and an area entered signal that triggers the script to add all loose coins to the player's inventory. It basically turns the coins into the same code that I used for the enemies, in which it lerps the position of the player with the position of the coin. The area entered signal basically does a lerp method that takes the current position of the player position. In 2D games, Godot stores position data as a vector 2, which is basically just two numbers, an x and y axis, right? And yes, it even works when the coins spawn in unreachable spots. You're welcome, completionists. Before, if you destroyed an enemy in the areas that were unreachable by the player, you would just never be able to get those coins for the rest of the game. So it was actually like part of the strategy that you would actually try not to kill enemies in that area, so it made you want to stay in the middle. That's no longer part of it. You can hug the walls. You can hump the walls as much as you want now. It's not a big deal. Next, let's talk about the new weapon, the Mortar. It's a primary weapon that's basically a giant Kamehameha, but pirate themed. Technically, it's an instance node 2D with a child animated sprite 2D node and an area 2D node. The area 2D node contains a collision shaped 2D node, which triggers the initial collision. The animation is handled using the animation sprite 2D with a spawn animation, idle animation, and I just reversed the animation for when the Mortar despawns. Here's some code. When the mortar spawns, it initializes the mortar time remaining variable. In the physics process delta function, I increment a timer to go down 1 per frame, which is 60 frames per second. So if I have the number at 200, that'll be basically 3 seconds and 20 frames, or 3 seconds and a third of a second. So, it'll be like 3.3333 extended seconds, right? Once the timer hits 0, the animation player plays the spawning animation in reverse, And then at the end of that, when it hits the last frame of the reverse, it queue frees. The queue free method basically just means to destroy whatever node that it's describing. So it's great for making it so that there's not a million bullets that never despawn, which ultimately will make your game crash, or at the very least really slow. Now to the Blunderbuss. It used to have a piercing effect by default, but I've nerfed that. Piercing now requires an upgrade. I'm using Godot's on area entered signal for collision detection. Previously, I tried to have the instantiation of each bullet occur in the script of the bullet itself, but then I was having two separate collisions in two different spots, one on the bullet and one on the enemy. It makes more sense to just detect the collision on the enemy and make it trigger both effects. This approach ensures consistent damage handling because the enemy instance now checks for collisions and emits the signals when hit. And now, one-handed mode, inspired by Vampire Survivor. I created a one-handed mode variable in my player controller script. If no primary weapon is equipped, this mode activates. The two primary weapons in the game are the Blunderbuss and the Mortar. The analog joystick controls remain the same, but gameplay becomes more relaxed. The one-handed also makes more sense if you want to play in a pseudo portrait mode on your mobile device or pad. I adapted Marco Fazio's virtual joystick project for this. His GitHub is linked in the description. I heavily modified his code to make it fit my two joystick setup, but his project was a fantastic starting point and I highly recommend it. I also want to mention that I am working on a new arcade mode-esque type game style mode, which is coming soon. I've been working on the tiles. I gotta talk to Biz about maybe getting more art for me, and hopefully I have something about that in the next video, and hopefully that comes out so you can play it soon. So that's where we're at with Infinity Pirate. Let me know if you want more deep dives into Godot development. Oh, and for my RPG Maker fans, don't worry, I still teach it locally and might revisit it for future content. Hit like, subscribe, and help hit that sweet 1,000 follower milestone. Salamat! Salamat! From the Philippines. And aloha, since I'm Hawaiian. Don't forget to sub to myself and other devs. Support us indies. And see you later. Okay then.